Okay, so nice to see so many people. Do you want a piece of paper? So this is a class on Purim, and it's interesting because a daughter of mine just sent me a book. It's called Let Them. Any of you familiar with that?
Yeah.
The whole Mel Robbins, the whole Let Them theory.
Yes.
Okay. So apparently it's like a real thing that people,
If you follow her.
if you follow her. Okay.
It's just called Let Them?
It's called Let Them. It's a Let Them theory.
Yeah.
Like if someone does something to you, let them. Like don't let it bother you. Let it just pass. And just those words kind of encapsulate like a lot of the theories. Just let them. And apparently she says people even tattooed it on their body because they were so interested in the let them. Just let them. It's a certain empowerment and just right. So it's like this empowerment and not feeling like someone's controlling you, but you feel like they want to feel the way they do. They want to think about you the way they do. They want to act the way that they do. Don't internalize it. Don't let it become something that affects you. Let them, just let them be who they are without being angry or being upset or letting it get you down in any way. And
song, Let It Be.
Let it be, right?
Well, like Frozen, like let it go.
Let it go.
Right.
Let them. So I thought it was like so apropos, like just 2 words, and it could really encapsulate that whole theory. Let them, and right as soon as you say it, let them, you just feel so much better. And I was thinking though, as I'm learning about Purim, that really we should have a book, Let Him. Right? Because there's so much that goes on in our world, and if we could really just figure out that it's not about what we're doing and our control and our situation, but just let Him, let God run the world, because God is running it in a way that makes sense, and it's going to come out to make sense, even though it feels sometimes so dark and so difficult. And I thought that would be the perfect book, especially for Purim, especially for the whole Purim story. If you want to write the Purim story with another title, it's Let Him, because He's running the whole show. He's really running everything and how it's working. But we don't always see that. And in fact, in the Purim story, the name of God is not even written. In the entire Megillah, if you look through it's the only book, the only holy book of scripture that we have, that the name of God does not appear in it even once. Very hidden. And even the book, Megillat Esther, the word Esther comes from Esther, hidden. God is hidden throughout the entire book. God is so hidden. We don't see Him. But behind the scenes, God is running it all. God is doing it all and changing the situation. So if there's ever a time that I felt that the book Megillat Esther and the story of Purim is appropriate, it's like we're living this now. We're living this now. This is our situation now. And there were so many times that we thought, never again, it can't happen. And not only can't it happen, but anti-Semitism, the way it was being done in the past was in the past. It's not something that's going to happen again in our cultured, aware society. And we see it over and over again, that no matter how much we think it's gone, it's there. And how does it start? How does it start in the Megillah? It seems to be starting from Haman. Haman, this evil, villainous man, full of hatred, hates the Jewish people, and he wants to annihilate them. And he wants to annihilate them in one day. Everyone. Taf v'nashim b'yom echad. Children, women, in one day, just wipe them all out. And let's again realize that this Purim was during the time of Achashverosh, during the time of the Persian Empire, where they were ruling over 127 areas, provinces. This was the entire world. And if he was going to annihilate the Jewish people from his entire regime, his entire area, this is everyone. This is the whole Jewish people. And all of this was supposed to happen on one day, by Yom Echad. And why did Haman decide this? Apparently, it looks like from the Megillah, that why is he doing this? Because he sees this person, Mordechai, And it says, Mordechai lo yichra velo yishtachaveh. Mordechai is not bowing, he's not bending down, he's not bowing to him. Haman has this ego, he wants everyone to bow to him, he's waiting for everyone to bow to him, everyone is bowing to him except for this one person, Mordechai, who refuses to bow down to him. So why is this one person who refuses to bow down to him something that bothers him so much? But it bothers him to no end. And this fact that this Jew is not bowing to him makes him decide, I'm going to kill out his entire nation. Because Mordechai, if there's one Mordechai, then there's an entire nation like Mordechai. If there's even one Mordechai left, that means that there's going to be these people who do not want to bow down, who do not want to be who don't want to be the same, who want to be different, who maintain who they are. And I want to read to you a quote that someone said, and if you know who said it, you can tell me. And this was the quote. If one little boy survives without any Jewish education, with no synagogue and no Hebrew school, it, meaning Judaism, is in his soul. Even if there had never been a synagogue or a Jewish school or an Old Testament, the Jewish spirit would still exist and exert its influence. It has been there for the beginning of time, and there is no Jew, not a single one, who does not personify it. Anyone know who said that? You know? You would think it's Chabad, right? Because that's like
Mark Twain. I was thinking.
Well,
Yeah, right here.
it was actually not a good person who said it.
Massimo.
But he got what we are.
Yeah, exactly.
It was Hitler. This was said by Hitler. He also said
with the conscience
of
the world.
conscience is a Jewish invention. It is a blemish like circumcision. And then he went on to say that if even one of them, so you're right, like you would say Chabad. This is a Chabad attitude. He got what is the essence of the Jew. He got the essence of a Jew that even, and what was he saying? That this is what Haman was saying. This is exactly what Haman was saying. If there's a Mordechai, if there's one Mordechai who doesn't bow down to me, then that's it. It's not good enough. This is a representation of the entire Jewish people and what the Jewish people are supposed to be doing in this world, which is the Jewish people are supposed to be a nation that brings morality and light and holiness and goodness and divine consciousness to this world. And so even if there's one of them here without education, not religious, forget about ultra-Orthodox, forget about Haredi, any Jew that's still there, it's in their soul. This is who they are. This is what they are. And it's fascinating because when you think about the whole idea of anti-Semitism, you wonder, why are we so hated? What did we do? What did we do that's so hated? And if you're going to say, we're rich, we're poor, we were hated when we're rich, we were hated when we were poor, we were hated when we were different, when we kept our customs, we were hated when we become secularized and assimilated. Whatever we're doing, we're still hated. Why is it that we're so hated? And the only way to understand this is that and by the way, there's a podcast this week, which I did with Rabbi Y.Y. Jacobson, who explains anti-Semitism in a beautiful way.
Oh.
Yeah, you should listen to it. It's beautiful. And he says, why is it that we're like that? Because the Jewish people have this certain frequency. They have this frequency where they're doing things, they know their purpose, and they know the purpose of why they're here. They're bringing light and morality and goodness and godliness, holiness to this world. And evil senses it. You see, Hitler sensed it. He got the deepest Chabad sources, which is what they say. He got it because he understood what is it that the Jewish essence is. And you might say, okay, so if the Jewish people are bringing in this frequency, this morality, this consciousness to the world, so maybe it's only some of them. Why is the ones that are assimilated? Why are the ones who are acting like non-Jews, who are trying to be non-Jews, what do they care about them? But this is what it's all about. There is every single Jew has in him this ability, this frequency, this idea, this soul that brings this godliness to our world. And there's no other way of understanding it. And that's why Haman wanted to eradicate. What's a little child? What's a little child? And, you know, if you look at the situation today in Israel, it was the same thing on October 7th. It was little children. What do little children, you know, have? What is their sin? But this is a part of that. This is the entire Haman, anti-Semites, Hitler, the whole evil philosophy. It's like they're allergic to the Jewish people, because the Jewish people have within them this soul that is bringing the soul and consciousness to the world. And that's our job, and that's our mission.
They're jealous.
They're jealous, yes. But what about those who aren't even doing it? What about those who are not acting so righteous and so big? But this is who we are. This is our essence. And so, yeah, you're jealous of something that you don't have. You're jealous of something that you see is something that is beautiful, even when you can't see it as beautiful. Something about it makes you allergic to it, and you can't stand it. And that's what Haman was saying. B'yom echad, on one day, I want to annihilate all of them. Taf, v'nashim, men, women, children, infants. And one day, they have to be gone. So, you know, and one of the things that I asked Rabbi YY is, so if this is something that is just a spiritual component that was from the beginning of time and that we know is till the end of time, so should we be putting all our energy into fighting it? Like, are we supposed to be just fighting anti-Semitism, or should we be just doing what we're supposed to be doing? And he said a very important answer, which I think is important to mention, and that is that, of course, we have to fight the anti-Semites in the world, and of course we have to do whatever we can to stop it. But we can't define ourselves by that. We can't define ourselves by fighting anti-Semitism. We have to remember, and this is what we did, Parsha Zachar, this past week. We remembered Amalek. But why do we remember Amalek? So that we can know who we are. We can't just remember the evil because it's evil. We remember the evil to remember who we are, to go on to what our mission is. And that is to bring light and holiness and goodness and kindness to this world. So we fight the anti-Semites with all the fiber of our being, because whatever we can do, obviously we want to fight evil. But that's not our story. That's not the story of the Jewish people. The real story of the Jewish people is that we're bringing this light and morality and divine consciousness to our world. And that's what we have to always remember is the main object of what we're here for. And that's what we see in the Purim story. So, and this is what Mordechai says, Yeshno am echad. There is this one nation. And there is always this one nation that remains. One nation. They're different. They're different from everybody. Whether they assimilate, whether they don't assimilate, whether they're rich, whether they're poor, whether they follow our customs or don't follow our customs, whether they're of one race or many races, because all the Jewish people are many races, whatever they are, whether they're from this country or that country, because we're all over the world, but there's still one nation. There's this one nation who have this, and whether they're in the 1900s or the 20th century or the 21st century or the 15th century, there is still this nation that is just this Am Echad, this one nation that has this job and this responsibility, and that's what they're going to be doing. And that's why those who hate us are trying so hard to eradicate us. And so, what started it all? When did it all start? So it actually says that the word Sinai, which is where we got the Torah, Har Sinai, has also in it the word sanoi. I know it's with a sin, but it's in the same, it's interchanged. It's interchanged. Sin'ah started, hatred started at Sinai, at Mount Sinai. When we became entrusted with the mission of bringing godly consciousness to the world as a people, that's when this hatred, this anti-Semitism started. Because as soon as you have a Sinai, a Matan Torah, that's when you have this hatred. And yet, when we received the Torah at Mount Sinai, The situation was very different than it was at Purim. The situation at Mount Sinai was total open revelation, godliness. It was God appeared to us. There was miracles. It was miraculous. It says when the Jewish people even went through the splitting of the sea, they could say, Zeh keli v'anveu. This is my God. I see it. I feel it. It's so tangible to me. I feel the expression of God. It's here. The word Zeh means that you can actually point. Imagine waking up in the morning and saying, God, I feel you in my life. I feel your presence. You're right here with me. You're right in giving me my strength, giving me my courage, I feel you. But most times we don't feel that way. We don't feel that way because now we're not in the time of this revelation of God. Mount Sinai was a time period when we could actually hear God speaking. The 10 Commandments, God spoke it. We were there. We witnessed the miracles. It was an awesome new reality that opened in front of our eyes. We could feel it. We could sense it. But today, and during the time period of Purim, it was very, very different. It was the opposite of the revelation at Mount Sinai. It was 1,000 years later, and in that 1,000 years, we no longer had our land. We were exiled at the time of Purim. We had no Beit HaMikdash. It was destroyed. It was in ruins. We were exiled to different lands. We were spread out. There was even the time period of the Nevi'im, which was the prophets. It was already at the end of that time period where there was no more prophecy. It was a time period where God seemed like he wasn't around. It felt very bleak. It felt very dark. It felt like you woke up and you don't see God. You don't know his presence. You don't feel his presence. So the time period of Purim is almost diametrically opposite the time period of Sinai. Sinai is open revelation, godliness, spirituality. We're all in a high. We're feeling great. We're feeling aligned with our mission. We're feeling like God is with us and we can do anything. And Purim is a time of darkness where we don't see God. Hester panim. There's this hiddenness of God. We don't feel him in our lives. And it's during this time period of Purim when we are feeling that God is not with us that we have this decree that everyone is supposed to be destroyed. Haman makes this decree. All the Jewish people are going to be destroyed. He makes a lottery. He chooses a lottery, and the lottery falls on Yud Gimel Adar. Purim, from Pur, exactly. And in 1 year's time, the Jewish people are going to be completely annihilated. And yet, even though the situation felt so bleak, and every single person, man, woman, and child, is going to be annihilated in all 127 provinces, which is the real world at the time, nevertheless, the Jewish people don't give up. And it says that not only did they not give up, but for that entire year, because it was a year from now that the event was supposed to happen on Yud Gimel Adar, on the 13th of Adar. For that entire year, it says not one person, not one Jew said, you know what? I don't need Judaism. What do I need Judaism for? Let me convert. I won't be a Jew. I won't have this difficulty. I won't be killed. Because if I'm not a Jew, it's only the Jews that are going to be killed. If I'm not a Jew, I won't be converted. Not one single person converted in that entire year. You know, it's so reminiscent of what we're living through today. We don't really realize we're living in biblical times. Who was the hostage that he was told, if you just convert, you just convert and I'll give you better food to eat. Yardain, yes, thank you. Just convert. Yardain Bidbas.
Right.
And for 2 days they starved him.
For 2 days they starved him. They told him, if you convert, you'll be better. This is like biblical stories that are unfolding in front of our eyes. We don't even realize the extent of it. But this is what's happening. Why? Because when you touch the core essence of the Jew, when everything seems like it's so hard and so difficult, you're squeezing the person so much that their insides are coming out. And what is the insides? We're bleeding, but what are we bleeding? What is the blood that's coming out of us? This divine consciousness, the soul, this connection to God, that connection to God that can never ever be broken. Because when it comes down to it, and this is why the hostages in their most difficult moments, in those tunnels, what are they doing? They're praying. They're looking for a siddur to pray. Even if they didn't before. What are they doing? They're making kiddush on Friday night on grape juice, saving the little salt on the pretzel in order to use it for their bread, to dip their bread in. Like this is showing you what is the Jewish soul. People who had no connection to it. Starting to keep Shabbat. Where are you starting to keep Shabbat? In the tunnels of Gaza? When you need the flashlights to be able to see, you refuse to put on the flashlights because this is Shabbat? When you never did it before. Because when you squeeze a person to their limit, when you're finally pulling them to their limit, what is coming out? The insides are coming out. Their kishkas are coming out. And what is the inside? Their inside is, we are Jews. This is who we are. This is our identity. You can't take it away from us, no matter what. And it says that people were so impressed with this, seeing the Jewish people, for that entire year, no one converted, that people even converted. People even converted to Judaism, because when you see people who are so proud, who are so sure, who are so confident of who they are, this is an example that you see and you say, there's nothing like this. This is something that's amazing. This is something there's no words for it. When you see hatred that's so horrible and despicable, you also say, this is amazing. This is like horrific. You know, like President Trump asked the hostages, was there anyone in Gaza who treated you nicely? Was there like anybody who was trying to show you some kind of kindness, a kind word, something? And they said, no. To the contrary, we were slapped, we were hated, we were punched in the ribs. So this is the diametric opposite. You see the hatred that is so evil, and you see the divine consciousness, which is so connected to God. And that's why it says, by the way, there's a turning point in the Megillah. There's a turning point in the Megillah where, you know, the decree is happening. Haman is making the decree, and all of a sudden it says, Balayla hahu nadada shnas hamelech. On that night, the king's sleep was disturbed. Achashverosh is twisting and turning in his bed, and he can't sleep. Poor Achashverosh. But it's then that his servants, you know, he asks them, read me, maybe I forgot to reward somebody, and his servants are opening the book of Sefer HaZikaron, the book of memory, and out it keeps opening to the page about Mordechai HaYehudi, the Mordechai that helped save Achashverosh when his servants wanted to poison him, and he helped and then he decides, okay, I have to reward Mordechai. It was soon after that Haman comes in to ask that Mordechai be killed, and he says, no, you should go and bride him in the streets along the streets, and say this is what's done to the man who the king desires. So it's at that moment that kind of the story shifts. There's a slight shift. They haven't been saved yet, but there's a shift. Everything was going downhill, and all of a sudden there's this shift. Balayla hahu nadada shadas hamelach. On that night, the king's sleep is disturbed. And every time that the Megillah is talking about the king, remember, it doesn't say God's name throughout the entire Megillah. But when it says Hamelech, the king, it refers to Hamelech, the king, capital King, God. And what's it telling us? Balayla hahu, on that night, the king is awakened from his sleep. The king God is awakened. Balayla hahu, on that night. When we look at the word balayla hahu, first of all, it's nighttime. There's a difference between day and night. Day is When we left Egypt, it said, Be'etzem hayom hazeh, in the middle of the day, hayom hazeh, that day. That's when we left. There was such clarity. There was such purpose. God had just done the 10 plagues. There was God in the air. We could feel God coming down and actually delivering us, taking us out of Egypt. There was a God consciousness in the air. The opposite of Etzem, Hayom Hazeh, or Hayom Hazeh, the opposite of Hayom Hazeh, the opposite of Hayom of day is Lila. The opposite of Hazeh, Hazeh is when you could say, you could point. You could look at it and you could say, Zeh, like Zeh, this is my God. You can actually point, you feel it. Who means that. It's not this, it's that. So Balayla Hahu signifies there was this double darkness. There was a darkness because it's nighttime, because we don't feel this revelation of God. And it's Balayla Hahu, it's that night, not this night, but that night. There's this double darkness, this double unfolding of this completely crippling darkness. And it's when we feel that total eclipse of light, when we're so overwhelmed by the darkness, when it feels so hopeless, when the situation feels like, where in the world is God? Where is he? That is when the essence of the Jew comes out. That is when the Jewish people were like, if this is going to be the rule, we're sticking with it. This is who we are. We're not converting. Not one of us is converting. When we're pushed to the limit, and unfortunately we see that today, after October 7th, we see so many Jews saying, on campuses, when there's so much anti-Semitism, it's those Jews that say, hold on, this is who I am. They want to destroy me, I'm going to be who I am. They want to kill me, this is who I am. When you're pushed and pulled to the limit and you're squeezed to the limit, this is when the essence comes out. But Laila Hahu, on that night, when the essence of the Jew finally emerged, who they were, that is when Nadanash Nas HaMelech, the king, is awakened. Because when that part of the Jew, which is called the Yechida, the essence of the Jew, that oneness of the Jew, that part of the Jew that's always connected to God. The outer layers may not be connected to God, but that essence is always connected to God. When that connection finally erupts, when it's finally shown, when it finally comes out, that's when God says, this is my people. This is my people. And God's slumber, so to speak, is awakened, and God is ready to help them. So that was when God decides things are changing, and things are going to be changed. But when we compare Mount Sinai to Purim, there's this revelation, and then there's this darkness. Not only a darkness, but we're saying a double darkness. Balayla Hahu is this double darkness versus at Sinai when there was this open revelation. And yet, it says that on Purim, it says, Kimu v'kiblu haYehudim. The Jews accepted. And it says, Kimu ma shekiblu. The Jews accepted what they had already accepted. What does this mean? It means at Har Sinai, at Mount Sinai, we said, Na'aseh v'nishma. We accept whatever you say, God. We're going to do it. We're going to do whatever you tell us. But it was on Purim that they re-accepted, that they really accepted what they did. They re-accepted now what they already said they would do, and this acceptance was so much more valuable. Why? So it says that when God gave us the Torah at Mount Sinai, it says, we said, Na'aseh v'nishma, we're going to do it, right? But it also says, there's a midrash that says that God took the mountain and he held it over them. He held it over us. And he says, either you accept the Torah and you accept to be my Jewish nation, or this will be your grave. Aye. And so we said, okay, we're going to accept it. Right? I mean, how could you not say it? But, yes, go ahead.
There is something about, I can't recall, that they say Naaseh first and then Nishma.
Yes. First they said, we'll do whatever you say, and then we'll listen.
Yes.
And then we'll hear the details, which was a tremendous, beautiful level. But there's also a midrash that says, why did they say Naaseh v'nishma? because God took this mountain and held it over their heads and said, either you accept or this is going to be your grave. So what does this mean? What does it mean? I mean, it doesn't sound like such a beautiful, imagine, God, who's our groom, is about to marry us, and he's like, well, either you marry me or... Doesn't sound so romantic,
I read
right?
somewhere that it was almost compared to a chuppah. The sign was over them as a chuppah because
That's
they were getting married. So
That is true,
I didn't hear that
exactly.
it was a grave. I like the analogy better.
Much nicer, right? Exactly. So do I. So what does it mean? Like, why is God forcing them?
He would have been so depressed. I mean, he might not have even been able to. What would have happened if that did happen? And then there was no Jewish nation. I mean, he loved the Jewish nation so much,
Right.
that he couldn't go on.
He couldn't go on. The world couldn't go on without
Right.
them. 100%. But what it's also saying is that it was as if God was forcing us, meaning the choice was so clear at Mount Sinai. When you're seeing such revelations of God, there's no way that it was so clear. It was as if someone's holding something over your head and saying, you want it or else that's it. It was so obvious that this is what we wanted. We were overwhelmed. It's like, if you're going out with this guy who's just showing you so much love, and he's rich, and he's handsome, and he's this, and he's that, and his character and everything. How could you say no? How could you say no? And he's showing you all his greatness. How could you say no? Right? So this is what the Jewish people felt like. They were overwhelmed with this love. Like, of course we're going to take it, because how could we not? But is that a real choice? Is that a real choice if you're so overwhelmed with this, wow, like this person's just so wowing you, God, not even a person, God is so wowing you. The choice is so clear. It's like giving a child a lollipop versus, a piece of broccoli. Like, of course, what is the kid going to choose? Like, how could you not choose the lollipop or that delicious piece of cake versus a salad or a piece of celery stick? Who's going to choose the celery stick? It was so obvious.
Nobody
the
ever
choice.
said that on their tombstone. Another piece of celery. Nobody ever has that on their tombstone.
So the fact that it was so overwhelming is why on Purim we had to re-accept it. We had to re-accept what we already accepted. Kimu masha kiplu. We accepted now, 1,000 years later, what we've already said. Why? Because on Purim, there wasn't this big revelation. There was darkness. There wasn't this light. It wasn't obvious. It wasn't an obvious choice. It would be a lot easier to not be Jewish. It would be a lot easier to convert and not have this threat of death being hung over your head. It'd be a lot easier not to be the Jewish nation. You're not the nation where you're in Jerusalem, where you have the temple, where you feel godliness, where you feel holiness, where you feel connected, where you feel this beauty and passion of what you're doing. You don't feel any of it. It's all dead. It's not there. It's dark. It's desolate. It's horrific. It's horrible. And yet you still want to be the Jewish people. Kimu masha kiplu. They accepted what they already had accepted. Now they're making it real. Now we're showing that this relationship is more than just when we're overwhelmed with God's love. But we are your nation no matter what. We are the nation of God. We accept our job of bringing divine consciousness and light to this world, even in a world that is lacking divine consciousness, and even in a world that is lacking that light, we accept it. So they re-accepted it, and this re-acceptance was even more special in some ways than at Matan Torah, than at the giving of the Sinai, because this came from a time of darkness. This came from the reality of what's inside of us shining out, and us knowing that this is our essence. We are the people of God. And we see this today. I mean, obviously, the fact that we're all here, the fact that we have such a huge turnout here, the fact that we're here celebrating and that we're going to be celebrating Purim as a Jewish nation thousands of years later, thousands of years after Sinai, thousands of years after we received the Torah, even when there's anti-Semitism all outside, and even when there's protests, and even when they're doing what they're doing to us in Israel, after October 7th, we're still here. because there's something about the Jewish soul that's sparkling and that's saying, this is who we are. And that's why this is reflected as well in the mitzvot of the day of Purim. So the mitzvot usually of a holiday is very much related to the holiday itself. And yet when we look at the mitzvot of Purim, we have mishloach manot, sending baskets or gifts of food to friends, to be friendly, to increase the ahavat Yisrael, the love for the Jewish people. And we have the mitzvah of matanot le'avyonim, which is giving money to poor people. So both of these mitzvot really are not so unique to Purim. I mean, on Purim we give the baskets of food, but the idea of giving to being friendly to another person, of ahavat Yisrael, loving a fellow Jew and increasing the friendliness amongst other people, is something that we do all year round. We always try to be friendly and increase or we try, or we should try, to increase the feeling of brotherly love amongst us, right? Giving gifts of presents to other people. And the idea of matanot le'avyonim, giving poor, the idea of tzedakah is a Jewish ideal. We do that every day. We do it all the time. We give away money to poor people all the time. We see someone who's poor, we help them, we give them. But there's something different about these two mitzvot that we do on Purim, and that is that we seek it out. See, during the year, when someone did something nice to you, so you give them a gift. You give them a gift because you want to thank them. When you feel that someone's down or they need something, so you give them a gift. You want to increase the brotherly love. When you see someone did something nice, you give them a gift. Or when someone comes to you and says, I need some money for charity, I'm going through a difficult time, of course you open your purse. But how often do we seek it out? Do we look for it? See, the mitzvah of ahavat Yisrael is that when someone comes to you, or when you see somebody who needs the lift, so you be nice to them. You do something nice. Or when someone poor comes to you, so you open your purse. When someone asks you for money, you give them. You open your purse and you give them. On Purim, we're looking for it. We're not waiting for somebody to come to us. We're not waiting for the poor person to come to us. We are initiating it. We are the ones to do it. We are the ones to start it. We're not just looking for being generally good to people, ahavat Yisrael. We're looking to give gifts even to anybody who comes here. No, we're giving you a gift. We're giving you something. And this is the difference between something that's an obligation versus something that's your inner desire to do. On Har Sinai, we realized this was our obligation. It's our obligation to say Na'aseh v'nishma. We're going to accept this mission that God is giving us because God needed us to do this mission. There's no way. We're going to do this mission because we see with clarity that this is the reason why the world was created, and we feel godliness in this world. On Purim, we did it because we want to do it. We didn't see it. It's not an obligation. But we wanted to do it. We wanted to be God's people. And this is reflected in the mitzvot of Purim, that we actively seek out. We're looking for poor people. There's no poor person who came to me. It doesn't matter. I'm obligated to give on that day. I'm looking for that person. I'm obligated to give. There's no Jew around me. Nevertheless, I'm going to do mishloach manot. I'm going to do ahavat Yisrael. Not because someone came to me, because I'm looking for it. And this is the difference between when we do something out of obligation versus desire. Because sometimes you can do it out of obligation and desire, and you're doing it with you're still doing it, you're both doing it just as good. But what about when the situation is such that the obligation is in front of you? Are you seeking it out? It's like the difference between, someone who's hired to take care of a child, who might be very good to the child, very loving, very responsible, very caring for the child, versus a mother. How's a mother going to take care of the child? She's going to look for the needs of the child. Not only when the child comes to her and says, I need this or I need that, she's going to anticipate the needs of the child. She's going to look for what she can do extra for the child. Why? Because she loves the child. Because this is who she is. And that's what Purim is. We say we are the Jewish people. We're looking for doing these good things because not out of obligation, but because of our desire, out of our love. Now, why did God originally give us the Torah like that, which we had to take it. It was just so obvious, the choice, because as Sandra said, the world needed it. It wasn't a choice. It was beyond something that we can choose. It was beyond the confines of choice, because this is the whole purpose of the world. How could we not have done that? But on Purim, we didn't just do it because this is something we needed to do. We did it because this is who we are. We understood this is who we are, and this is our desire to be this way. So this Purim, we are all here gathered, and we are all going to be doing it out of the same desire, not because of obligation, but because this is who we are as the Jewish people. It's hard sometimes, and in our own personal lives, same situation. We could feel that Laila Hahu, that darkness, that double-fold darkness, that difficulty, that struggle, where godliness is not apparent to us, where things are not going as they should be going. Because the way things should be going is you do a good thing, you see the result. You see a positive result. You act in the right way, you see the right result of it. That you're following the manual should be working, right? You're following the manual as it should be doing, the thing should be working. But we live in a topsy-turvy world. We live in a Purim world. In a world where there's costumes, where things are covered, where God is covered, where we don't see God. And it's even in this darkness that, or maybe specifically in this darkness, that we discover who we really are. And who are we really? All of us sitting here tonight, all of us hearing tonight, came tonight to study, to learn, to understand what we are as the Jewish people. And that is really the beauty, that after so many years of exile, we're all here. We're here wanting to study, wanting to learn, wanting to do more. And I think that really is the biggest miracle ever.
Yeah, that we are still here.
That we're still here, and that we're still here.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I wish you all that this Purim we should see V'neha Pochu, which means things should be turned over.
Yeah.
And we can actually see the revelation of God, where Nadada Shnas Hamel, God wakes up from his slumber, and actually he's not in a slumber, he's working things out, but we want to see it in real life. We want to see it in real reality. And we want to see the miracles that happened on Purim. We want to see it. They are happening. They're happening in many ways, but we want to see it in real life, that we can see it, that we can appreciate it, and that we can all say, this is a beautiful miracle. And we should be able to point to it and say, look at this miracle. And the La Yehudim Haisa'ira, V'simcha, V'sasam, V'yikar, that the Jewish people ended up having light and happiness and joy, and may we all witness it now as well.
Amen. Amen.